My new son-in-law, Donovan, sat at my kitchen table, the one my husband Walter bought me 40 years ago. He had a smile on his face that was as wide and as fake as a $3 bill. It was Sunday, just 4 days after he married my daughter Tasha. The air should have been full of leftover joy from the wedding, sweet as the scent of the peach cobbler I had baking in the oven. Instead, the air was thick with greed. He slid a thick stack of papers across the polished wood, stopping them right beside my cup of lukewarm tea. "Mom," he said, his voice smooth as silk. He'd started calling me that the second the preacher said, "I now pronounce you." "Since we're family now," Tasha and I were talking, "we're worried about you being all alone in this big house. We want to make sure you're taken care of." My Tasha, my only child, sat beside him, nodding like a doll on a dashboard. She looked at him with big, shiny eyes, so full of what she thought was love. She reached over and patted my hand. "Mama, he's right. Donovan knows about finances and all that complicated stuff. He just wants to help you manage things, so you don't have to worry your pretty little head about it." I looked down at the papers. The words at the top were big and scary. Durable power of attorney. I didn't need to be a lawyer to know what that meant. He wanted control. Of my house. Of my bank account. Of my life. He wanted to own me, just like he now owned my daughter's heart. I felt a cold dread wash over me, but it was followed by a flicker of fire deep in my soul. I looked from his slick, confident face to my daughter's hopeful one, and all I could think was, thank God she doesn't know. She didn't know about the $7 million her father had left me. Donovan clearly didn't either. He was fishing in a pond, thinking he'd catch a few catfish, not knowing a blue whale was hiding in the deep. And in that moment, I knew my dear departed Walter had been right all along. 6 months earlier, I was holding Walter's hand in a sterile white hospital room that smelled of bleach and fear. He was a big man, a builder, with hands that were calloused and strong from a lifetime of hard work. But now, his hand in mine felt like a bundle of fragile twigs. He had built a successful contracting business from the ground up, with nothing but a toolbox, a pickup truck, and a dream. He was quiet, but he was smart. He saw things other people missed. "Eleanor," he'd whispered, his voice raspy, "you listen to me. That money from the business sale, it's all taken care of. It's yours, but you can't tell Tasha, not yet." I shushed him. "Walter, don't talk like that. You're going to be fine." He gave a weak, rumbling laugh that turned into a cough. "Baby, we both know my building days are over. Now you listen. Tasha is a good girl, but she's got a soft heart and a softer head when it comes to men. She's a giver. She'll meet some smooth-talking fool who will see her as a walking bank account. Don't you let him get his hands on what we built. You keep that money a secret. You protect it. You protect her from herself. You'll know when the time is right." A week later, I buried my husband of 45 years. The pastor from our church, First Baptist on the corner, gave a beautiful sermon about what a pillar of the community Walter had been. The church hall was filled with people, and the tables were heavy with fried chicken, macaroni and cheese, and collard greens that my church sisters had made. But all I felt was a hollow ache in my chest. The house was so quiet when I got home. The silence was louder than any noise I'd ever heard. I would walk into the living room and expect to see him in his recliner, watching the game. I'd catch a whiff of his Old Spice aftershave in the closet and my knees would go weak. For weeks, I just went through the motions. I tended to my little garden in the backyard, I went to church on Sundays, and I sat on the porch watching the world go by. I was just a simple old widow in a paid-off house, living on a small pension. That's what everyone thought. And that's what I wanted them to think. 2 months after the funeral, Tasha called me, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Mama, I met someone." His name was Donovan Sinclair. He worked in wealth management, she said. He was handsome, drove a nice car, and treated her like a queen. The first time she brought him over for Sunday dinner, he walked in with a bouquet of lilies for me and a bottle of expensive wine. He was all teeth and compliments. "Mrs. Hayes, it is an absolute honor to meet you," he said, shaking my hand. His grip was firm, but his eyes were like a hawk's, scanning everything. "Tasha has told me so much about you. And this house, it has such character, a real classic. Mr. Hayes built it himself, didn't he? A true craftsman." I just smiled. Walter was good with his hands. Throughout dinner, he kept the compliments coming. He loved my cooking. He loved the family photos on the mantel. But his questions were sharp, hidden under a layer of charm. "So, did Mr. Hayes's company have a good retirement plan? It's so important to have your affairs in order. I help people with that all the time. Planning for the future is key." I just stirred my iced tea. Walter took care of everything. We were simple people. Didn't need much. Of course," he said, smiling that slick smile. "Simplicity is the ultimate luxury." Tasha was in heaven. She'd always had bad luck with men. Men who were lazy, men who cheated, men who saw her kindness as a weakness. Now, here was Donovan, a man who seemed to have it all together. He showered her with gifts. He took her on fancy dates. He talked about their future, a future with a big house and beautiful children. My daughter, who was a hard-working first-grade teacher, was blinded by the shine. I tried to talk to her once, gently. We were in the kitchen, washing dishes after one of his visits. "Tasha, honey, don't you think things are moving a little fast?" She stopped scrubbing a plate and turned to me, her brow furrowed. "Mama, what's that supposed to mean? I'm finally happy, and you're trying to ruin it." "No, baby, that's not it. It's just, he seems to ask a lot of questions about money, about Daddy's business." Her face hardened. "He's in finance, Mama. That's what he does. He's trying to make conversation. You just don't trust anybody. You think every man is out to get something. Maybe you just don't want me to be happy." Her words stung more than a slap. I saw then that there was no getting through to her. She was in too deep. Anything I said against him would just sound like a bitter, lonely old woman trying to hold on to her only child. Before we continue, quick question. What would you do in this situation? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. 3 months after they met, they were engaged. The wedding was a blur of ivory lace and champagne. It was a beautiful ceremony, but my heart was heavy. I looked at Donovan standing at the altar, looking so proud in his tailored tuxedo. I watched him smile at my daughter, and I saw a hunter smiling at his prize. I noticed that his side of the church was nearly empty. There was no mother or father, no siblings. Just a few men he called his business partners, who looked just as slick and predatory as he did. My side was filled with my church family, my cousins and old neighbors, people who had known me and Walter for decades. People who were truly family. My little grandson Aiden, from Tasha's previous relationship, was the ring bearer. He was only 6, and he looked so handsome in his little suit. As he walked down the aisle, he kept looking back at me, a little scared of all the people. I gave him a reassuring smile, but inside, I was terrified for him, for his future, now tied to this stranger. And that brought me back to my kitchen table, with the power of attorney papers sitting in front of me like a coiled snake. Donovan leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Look, Mom, I've seen this 100 times. A widow, all alone, becomes a target for scammers. They'll try to get you to sign up for a reverse mortgage or sell you fake insurance. If you give me power of attorney, I can protect you. I can handle the property taxes, the utilities, all of it. I can even look at your portfolio and make sure your money is working for you." My portfolio? The man was so arrogant he just assumed I had one. He thought he was playing chess, but he couldn't even see the whole board. I looked at Tasha. Her face was a mask of concern, but her eyes were pleading with me. "Please, Mama, just sign it. Don't make a scene. Don't embarrass me." She thought this was an act of love, an act of a good husband taking care of his new family. She couldn't see the cage he was building around us both. I let out a long, shaky breath and put my hand on my chest, playing the part of the frail, overwhelmed old woman he saw me as. Oh my, this is all so much. Legal papers. My head is just spinning. Your father, he handled everything. I never even wrote a check for the light bill. I looked around the room as if searching for an answer in the air. He told me, Eleanor, if anything ever happens to me, everything you need is in the blue folder. He had a file for everything. It was a complete lie. Walter kept all our important documents in a fireproof safe, and I knew the combination by heart. But Donovan didn't know that. His eyes, which had been patient and patronizing, suddenly sharpened. A flicker of pure, uncut greed flashed in them before he could hide it. A blue folder. He could smell the money. A blue folder? He asked, his voice a little too eager. Where is it, Mom? We can help you find it. It's probably very important that we locate that right away. I pressed my fingers to my temples. Oh, goodness. I think he kept it in one of those old file boxes, in the attic. It's such a mess up there. I haven't been up there in years. Tasha jumped in. Oh, Mama, we can help you with that. Donovan is strong. He can get the boxes down. We can come over this Saturday and have a look. Yes, Donovan said, stacking the power of attorney papers neatly. He patted them. We'll find that folder, and then we can get all of this sorted out. You just relax, Mom. We'll take care of everything. They left a few minutes later, after giving me hugs that felt like I was being measured for a coffin. I watched from the window as Donovan opened the car door for Tasha, ever the gentleman. He got in, said something to her, and they both laughed. The moment their car turned the corner, the frail old woman disappeared. I stood up straight, my back stiff with resolve. I walked over to the mantelpiece and picked up the framed photo of me and Walter, taken on our 40th anniversary. He had his arm around me, and we were both smiling a real, genuine smile, the kind that reaches your eyes. I traced the line of his strong jaw with my finger. Okay, Walter, I whispered to the empty, silent house. The game is on. He wants a prize? I'll give him one to chase. I went to my phone and dialed the number for a man Walter had always trusted, a lawyer downtown named Mr. Alston. I had a lot of work to do before Saturday. I needed to create some documents. I needed to build a trap. And Donovan Sinclair, my brand new son-in-law, was about to walk right into it, whistling a happy tune. He thought he was about to get everything. He had no idea he was about to lose it all. The next morning, I was sitting in the downtown office of Alston and Fry, a law firm that had been a pillar of our community for 50 years. The office wasn't fancy, no floor-to-ceiling glass windows overlooking the city. It was comfortable. The walls were paneled with dark wood and covered in degrees from Howard University and photos of Mr. Alston with various city mayors and community leaders. It smelled like old books and fresh coffee. Samuel Alston had been Walter's lawyer and friend since they were both young men trying to make their way. He was a tall, silver-haired man with a calming presence and eyes that saw everything. He listened patiently as I told him the whole story, from Walter's warning in the hospital to Donovan's smarmy performance at my kitchen table. I didn't cry. The time for tears was over. Now was the time for clear thinking. When I finished, he leaned back in his big leather chair and steepled his fingers, looking at me over his glasses. Walter was a wise man, Eleanor. Wiser than most, he said, his voice a low, steady baritone. He saw this coming, and this Donovan character. I've seen his type before, a shark in a tailor-made suit. He paused. So you want to set a trap, and you want me to help you build it? I do, Samuel, I said firmly. Donovan thinks I'm a helpless old woman with a paid-off house and a small pension. If I suddenly have $7 million, he might get spooked. Or worse, he might get dangerous. I need to give him something he thinks he can get his hands on easily, Something that will make him greedy enough to make a mistake. Mr. Alston nodded slowly, a small smile playing on his lips. I like it. A smaller prize for a smaller mind. We'll draft a new, official last will and testament for Walter. Simple. Everything to his beloved wife, Eleanor Hayes. No trusts, no complications. The kind of will a man who doesn't trust banks would write himself. Exactly, I said. And the assets, he continued, already pulling a legal pad toward him. We can create a portfolio statement, nothing too wild, some blue-chip stocks. Let's say a total value of about $350,000. Believable for a successful small business owner. And we'll add a life insurance policy. 100,000 maybe. Enough to make his eyes light up. For the next hour, we planned. He would have his team create a set of beautifully forged documents. They'd look real, feel real, right down to the watermarks on the paper. We'd have fake bank statements showing a healthy savings account, but not a massive one. We'd have official-looking letters from a brokerage firm. Everything would be neatly placed inside a simple light blue folder. He promised he'd have it all ready for me by Friday afternoon, delivered by a trusted courier. Eleanor, he said as I stood to leave, you be careful. Men like this don't just get mad when they're crossed. They get even. When he finds out this is a fake, he will turn his anger on you, and he will turn it on Tasha. I'm counting on it, I said, my voice harder than I intended. That's the only way my daughter will ever see who she married. The next few days were a special kind of torment. I had to act normal. On Wednesday, I went to my weekly Bible study at First Baptist. My best friend, Gloria, sat next to me. We've been friends since our kids were in diapers. She's a retired nurse, sharp as a tack and doesn't suffer fools. After the closing prayer, she pulled me aside as everyone else gathered for coffee and cake. You've got that storm cloud over your head again, Eleanor, she said, her hand on my arm. And it's not just about Walter anymore. What's going on? We went to a little booth at Peach's Cafe, a Black-owned spot down the street that's been serving the best biscuits and gravy for 30 years. Over sweet tea, I told her everything. I told her about the $7 million, about Donovan and his papers, and about the trap I was setting. She listened, her expression growing sterner with every word. That no-good, trifling, slick-backed... She stopped herself and took a deep breath. Lord, forgive me. But Eleanor, you are playing with fire. Tasha is so wrapped up in that man, she can't see the forest for the trees. I know, Glo, I said, stirring my tea. But what else can I do? If I just tell her, she won't believe me. She'll think I'm a bitter old woman trying to break up her marriage. He has her convinced that he's her savior. I have to let her see it. I have to let him show her who he really is. Gloria squeezed my hand across the table. Her hand was warm and strong. Well, you're not in this alone. Your church family is your family. You let me know what you need. You need folks to be praying? Done. You need a couple of big deacons to just happen to be visiting when he's over? You just say the word. I smiled, feeling a little bit of the weight lift off my shoulders. Thank you, Glo. For now, just prayers will do. Saturday came too fast. At 10 in the morning, Donovan's shiny black car pulled into my driveway. He got out, wearing jeans and a tight-fitting polo shirt, looking like he was ready for a day of manly work. Tasha followed, carrying a box of donuts and wearing a bright, hopeful smile. My heart ached just looking at her. "Morning, Mom," Donovan boomed, giving me a one-armed hug. "Ready to go treasure hunting?" "As I'll ever be," I mumbled, playing my part. "It's so dusty up there. I don't know how we'll find anything." "Don't you worry," he said, patting my shoulder. "We'll be systematic about it. We'll clear it out, box by box." The attic was hot and smelled of cedar and decades of dust. Sunbeams cut through the grime on the single window, illuminating floating dust motes like tiny diamonds. It was a museum of our life. Aiden's old crib, Tasha's high school yearbooks, Boxes of Walter's old records. Donovan, to his credit, was efficient. He moved boxes with an energy that was almost frantic. He wasn't looking for memories, he was on a mission. Tasha oohed and awed over old photographs, but Donovan kept her focused. "Come on, babe. We're looking for a blue folder, remember?" I had planted it myself the night before. I'd tucked the folder Mr. Alston had prepared deep inside a heavy trunk filled with old winter blankets. After about an hour of performative searching, I remembered the trunk. "Oh, wait," I said, putting a hand to my forehead. Walter had this old trunk he used to call his safe box. He kept things in there he didn't want anyone to touch. Donovan's head whipped around. "Where is it?" I pointed a shaky finger toward the far corner, behind a stack of old luggage. He was over there in a flash, pulling the luggage away. He heaved the heavy trunk into the middle of the floor and lifted the lid. The smell of mothballs filled the air. He began pulling out the heavy wool blankets, tossing them aside. And then he saw it. A light blue folder, nestled at the very bottom. I think this is it," he said, his voice trying for casual but failing. He held it up. "Oh, thank heavens," I breathed, clutching my chest. Tasha rushed over to his side. He slowly pulled the folder from the trunk, as if it were a holy relic. He blew a speck of dust off the cover and opened it. He stood there, in the middle of my hot, dusty attic, reading the fake will. His eyes scanned the page, then scanned it again. I watched the muscles in his jaw tighten. He then pulled out the fake brokerage statement from Morgan Stanley. His eyes widened almost comically as he read the number, $354,821.57. Then came the life insurance policy, $100,000. He looked up, first at Tasha, then at me. He had a brilliant, predatory smile on his face. This was it. This was the moment the trap sprang shut. "Well, Mom," he said, his voice slick with false sympathy. "It looks like Walter left you in a very comfortable position. A little over $450,000. That's a significant amount of money to manage on your own." Tasha gasped. "Oh, Mama, that's wonderful. Daddy took care of you." "But it's also a big responsibility," Donovan cut in smoothly, already taking control of the narrative. He put his arm around Tasha. "This makes things much clearer. That power of attorney isn't just a good idea anymore, Mom. It's essential. We can't have this kind of money just sitting in a regular checking account. It's not safe. And it's not growing." He held up the papers like a prize. "On Monday, I'm going to set up a new investment account. A trust. It will protect the principal and give you a nice monthly income. All you have to do is sign the POA, and I can handle the transfer. We'll move everything over. It'll be safe, with me." I looked at my daughter's face. She was beaming, looking at her husband like he was the smartest, kindest man in the world. She saw a protector. I saw a thief holding up his loot and telling me how he was going to fence it for my own good. He hadn't even asked me what I wanted to do. He had just decided. I'll have to think about it, Donovan," I said, trying to sound weak and uncertain. His smile tightened. The charm evaporated, and for a split second, I saw the cold, hard man underneath. "There's nothing to think about, Mom," he said, his tone no longer asking, but telling. "I'll bring the bank forms over Monday morning along with the POA. We'll get it all signed at once. It's for the best." He closed the blue folder with a decisive snap. The sound echoed in the quiet attic like a cell door slamming shut. He had the scent of money in his nose, and he was done playing games. He thought he had me right where he wanted me. He had no idea. He was right where I wanted him. That weekend was the longest of my life. The house felt like a pressure cooker, every tick of the grandfather clock in the hall counting down to Monday. I called Gloria on Sunday night after I'd watched the evening news and pretended to be calm. "He took the bait," I said, my voice low. I was sitting in Walter's recliner, the worn leather cool against my arms. Hook, line, and sinker. And Tasha? Gloria's voice was full of worry. She thinks he's Prince Charming coming to save the day, I sighed. She's so proud of him, Glo. It's breaking my heart to have to do this to her. Sometimes you have to break a bone to set it right, Eleanor. You know that. A clean break heals better than letting it stay crooked forever. You just hold on tight. I've got Pastor Williams and 2 of the biggest deacons on standby. You just text me the word help, and they'll be at your door in 10 minutes flat, just dropping by to check on a grieving sister. Her words were a comfort. A life raft in the middle of a storm. Thank you, Glo. I hope it doesn't come to that. This is something Tasha needs to see with her own 2 eyes. She will, Gloria said firmly. A man's true character always comes out when he doesn't get what he wants. You just be ready for it. We hung up, and I sat there in the dark, the blue folder on the coffee table in front of me. I was ready. Monday morning, at 9:30 sharp, Donovan's car pulled up. He was wearing a suit this time, a charcoal gray one that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. He looked like he was heading to a corporate takeover. Tasha was beside him, dressed in a nice pantsuit herself, looking like his loyal associate. They walked in, and Donovan was all business. He didn't even offer a fake hug, just placed his leather briefcase on my kitchen table and clicked it open. "Good morning, Mom," he said, his voice crisp. He pulled out the power of attorney papers from Saturday and a new stack of documents. "I have everything we need right here. These are the transfer forms for the new trust account. We just need your signature on the POA right here and then on these forms, and I can have everything moved over by this afternoon. It'll be secure, and you won't have to worry about a thing." He slid the papers and a fancy pen across the table. Tasha stood behind him, her hand on his shoulder, smiling at me. It was a well-rehearsed performance. I looked at the papers. I looked at the pen. Then I looked up and met Donovan's impatient gaze. I folded my hands on the table and didn't make a move. "I'm not going to sign them," I said. My voice was quiet, but it was as firm as the oak tree in my front yard. The smile on Tasha's face faltered. "Mama, what are you talking about? We discussed this. Donovan is trying to help." Donovan's eyes narrowed. The friendly mask twitched. "Mom, with all due respect, we don't have time for cold feet. This is a serious financial matter." "I know it is," I said calmly. "And I spent all day yesterday praying on it. I prayed for guidance. And last night, your father came to me in a dream." Tasha's eyes went wide. She'd always believed in signs and dreams, something she got from my mother. "Daddy? What did he say?" I looked straight at Donovan, whose face was slowly turning a blotchy red. "He told me, clear as day, 'Eleanor, you hold on. Don't you sign a thing. You wait.'" Donovan let out a sharp, ugly laugh. "A dream? You're making a $500,000 decision based on a dream? Eleanor, that's ridiculous. This is the real world. You can't manage this kind of money by yourself." The word Mom was gone. It was Eleanor now. "It's my money, Donovan. I'll manage it how I see fit," I said, my voice still even. "No, you won't." He slapped the table and the silverware in the ceramic holder on the counter rattled. Tasha jumped. "You'll lose it. You'll get scammed by some Nigerian prince in an email, or you'll just let it sit there and rot. I am trying to do you a favor. I am trying to protect this family's assets." "Mama, listen to him," Tasha pleaded, her voice shaking a little. "He knows about this stuff. Maybe Daddy's dream meant something else." "Tasha, be quiet," Donovan snapped, not even looking at her. His eyes were locked on me, blazing with fury. "This is what I'm talking about. She's old. She's not thinking clearly. She probably doesn't even understand what this is." That's when Tasha finally found her spine, if only for a second. "Donovan, don't talk to my mother that way." He whipped his head around to face her, and the rage he'd been aiming at me was now directed at his wife of less than a week. The charm was completely gone. In its place was a monster I knew had been lurking there all along. "Don't talk to your mother that way," he sneered, his voice dripping with venom. "I am trying to secure our future. The future I promised you. Or did you forget about that? Did you forget about all that debt you came into this marriage with? Those credit cards you maxed out? That car loan you could barely afford?" Tasha shrank back, her face pale. I felt a cold knot of dread form in my stomach. I didn't know about any of that. "I took care of that for you, didn't I?" he went on, stepping toward her. He was backing her into a corner of her own mother's kitchen. "I consolidated everything for you. A clean slate," I said. "But those papers you signed weren't just for a consolidation loan, Tasha. I own your debt now, every penny. And that new car I so generously helped you buy? The title is in my name. So if you don't start acting like a supportive wife and help me convince your stubborn mother to do the smart thing, I will ruin you. I'll call in the entire debt tomorrow. I'll repossess your car. You're a teacher, right? How will you get to work? Your credit score will be so low you won't be able to get a library card. Is that what you want?" Tasha started to cry, silent tears streaming down her face. She looked at me, her expression a horrible mix of shame and terror. He had trapped her long before he ever came for me. My daughter was in love with her own warden. That was it. The line had been crossed. The battle wasn't about my money anymore. It was about my child's soul. I stood up slowly. The frail, confused old woman was gone for good. Every bit of strength from my 45 years with Walter, every ounce of a mother's protective instinct, rose up in me. My voice, when I spoke, was as cold and sharp as broken glass. "Get away from her, Donovan." He turned to me, a triumphant smirk on his face. "See? Now you get it. We all need to work together. So just sign the papers, Eleanor, and we can all have a nice day." "The only thing I'm going to sign is your eviction notice from this family," I said. I walked over to the counter and picked up my purse. He watched me, thinking I was getting the pen. Instead, I pulled out a small digital voice recorder and placed it on the table. The little red light was blinking. It had been on since he walked in the door. His smirk vanished. "And just in case a recording of you threatening and trying to blackmail your wife and extort your mother-in-law isn't enough," I continued, my voice level, "I took the liberty of having my lawyer do a little research on you. It's amazing what you can find in public records if you know where to look." I looked him dead in the eye. I didn't need any notes. I had memorized every word Mr. Alston had told me. "You're not a wealth manager at Morgan Stanley, are you, Donovan? You got fired from a low-level job there 3 years ago for unethical practices. Your real name isn't even Donovan Sinclair. It's Daniel Jenkins. And this isn't your first marriage. You married a woman in Florida, a widow named Helen, who was 68 years old. You drained her entire retirement account, $200,000, and disappeared, leaving her with nothing. There's a warrant out for your arrest in Collier County, Florida, for fraud and grand larceny." The color drained from his face. He looked like he'd been punched in the gut. He stared at me, his mouth slightly open, the confident predator suddenly looking like cornered prey. Tasha was staring at him too. Her tears stopped, her face a mask of dawning horror and disbelief. "The police down there would be very interested to know that a Daniel Jenkins, who matches your description perfectly, just got a marriage license here under a new name," I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper. "All it would take is one phone call." I picked up my cell phone from the counter. I held it up. "Get out of my house," I commanded. "Get out of my daughter's life, and don't you ever, ever come back. Because if I so much as see your shadow on this street again, I will make that call." He stood frozen for a moment, his mind racing, the gears grinding behind his terrified eyes. The trap hadn't just failed. It had blown up in his face. He looked at Tasha, then at me. There was no apology in his eyes. There was only pure, unadulterated hatred. Without another word, he turned, snatched his briefcase off the table, and stormed out the front door, We heard his car start with a roar and peel out of the driveway, leaving the scent of burnt rubber and broken promises hanging in the air. Tasha finally let out a choked sob and collapsed into a kitchen chair, burying her face in her hands. The room was silent except for her weeping. I walked over and switched off the recorder. The battle was won. But looking at my daughter's shattered heart, I knew the war was far from over.